Hello everyone and welcome back to the Mahindra Global Chess League 2025. We have another day. We have 4 matches today to go to. And let's start by taking a look at the gameplay between Gukesh and Hikaru Nakamura. Those two guys, they created some controversy a couple of months ago when Team USA beat Team India in a match with 5-0 score. And of course Hikaru threw the king to the crowd. But now they're back, and again it's a team competition, and they already played against each other in the first leg of the event, and that game finished in a draw. I think I analyzed it actually. Go check out, I think it was the first day of the event, and now they go face to face against each other, but now Gukesh has the white pieces. And we have 2 knights defense. Gukesh doesn't go for right lever attack. d3, h6, a3, g6, and Hikaru plays, let's say, not the most common setup against this thing, but still becomes quite popular because generally black don't have a lot of problems to deal with. Queen e7, the plan is to go bishop e6, maybe even long castle at some point, then d5. King d2, bishop e6, then queen d7, potentially trying to aim h3 pawn. Bishop e6, f takes e6, that also is quite common just to support your pawn going to d5. And after knight e2, the plan is to go d4. d5, takes, d4, knight e4, queen goes back to d1, and now pawn takes. So position becomes very interesting just because this pawn structure, as I said, that's not the most common setup, and specifically because now Hikaru took on e6, then he took on d5, and there is like a little pawn island, and I genuinely like Gukesh position here much more, because Hikaru would need to think of how he can protect this pawn. Yeah, in theory he has g5 and all that stuff. He would probably have to go long castle. Short castle probably is good, then king h7, but let's see what happened. Knight d4, knight e7, bishop f4, aiming maybe towards knight d5, c5, bishop e5, trying to trade some pieces of the board, knight e2, and now goes for short castle, rook d8. Rook 8 looks logical. Now knight f4, and this pawn is potentially under attack, this pawn is potentially under attack. It's tough to move pieces. h4 is played, which computer thinks is a mistake, and now takes rook f4. So now this bishop has to go back, bishop e5, rook goes to f8, and now queen d3. And as I said, you always gotta think, now it's not a threat due to knight g6, but it might become one just because, let's say h5, knight h4, knight g6, and whatnot, knight f5, rook d1, and now this pawn is under attack, so rook d6, bishop f4, rook d1. So you might wonder why not king d5 immediately. Could have played, I'm not sure what was going through Gukesh's mind. Maybe he didn't like rook 8. Yeah, looks a bit inconvenient just because the bishop cannot move away due to the pin, and if rook goes away from the file, then knight e5. So maybe he didn't like something about it, even though computer thinks it's safe. But of course for the players it's a bit tough to determine whether, let's say king d5 capture is good or not. So bishop f4, takes, queen goes to f7, g3, and Gukesh generally has I can't say a safe play, but he doesn't have a worry about some g5 ideas. Yes, there are some, but they don't create anything. White will just simply take. Knight goes back to f6, and after knight e5, queen e6, guess what? Pawn's under attack, but okay, rook on e1 is still under attack as well. So rook goes to e2, rook 8, once again you cannot take, rook goes back to e1, you cannot take, and now queen c8 is a blunder, because after bishop h6, guess what happens? Knight h6, king g6, and picks up a knight with a winning position. Pawn goes to c4, queen f3, and now if takes, queen f6 comes, knight e4, knight g4, now protecting this one and potentially setting up knight f6 idea. Rook goes to e6, h5 is a blunder because apparently Hikaru had knight h6, king g7, and he's safe. Tough to see. I kinda agree. Knight g5 was played on set, attacking the queen and attacking the rook. Queen goes to d5, pinning this rook, knight f3, takes, rook e1, king h2, and now Gukesh is up. He's down in material, but he has just potentially an insane attack on the king. So queen goes to e6, queen a8, king h7, queen goes to f8, setting up checkmate threat. But after g takes h5, Knight f6 doesn't really work because now this square is free. King g8, knight g8, queen f7, and after queen d8, setting up queen g5 checkmate, knight h6, Hikaru won the game as Gukesh resigned. And that match ended up with a 9-7 score towards Gukesh's team. So his team won 2 matches in a row, and then we move on to the next match played between Pipers and Continental Kings, where Alireza Firouzja is on an insane run. He won 5 first games in this tournament, and now he's facing Fabiano Caruana. So c4, pawn goes to g6, e4, and we're going to King's Indian defense. e5, d5, modern variation, bishop d3, knight a6, bishop e3, bishop h6, trading bishop off the board. That's very smart idea. Knight g4, h3, knight f6, knight e2, queen f7. And to me, it seems like Alireza kind of solved all his problems from the beginning. He traded this bishop off the board. The more space white have, the more pieces they would need, and Alireza solved one of the problems. So knight d7, long castle, knight d5, bishop d1, bishop d7, f4. He takes f4, queen f4, long castle as well, rook f1, knight b4, and now Alireza is trying to create counterplay. Knight d3 is a serious threat just because, now it's a queen win, so king goes to d2, rook f8. So why not queen f7, let's say? Queen f7 is not good because here I believe you can go this knight, you can go either knight. And now, let's say if takes and you go king c2, and it looks like you take all the material, but there is knight e5, and this pawn is under attack, so it's not good. So king goes to d2, rook goes to f8, and now queen f6, king d8, knight d4, takes, king f7, rook f2, f6 looks extremely passive. So a3, knight d2, bishop c2, knight f4, h4, and knight d7. Not forgetting about the pawn, I can't say it, but the plan is to go knight e5. But after knight e5, those 2 pawns are under attack. There's king c3, knight c5. Now this pawn is under attack, and also bishop is under attack, so bishop has to return. And after knight g4, rook e2, rook a1, rook a8, there is no b4. But I think there might be b4. But I think he was afraid of something. Maybe because pawn becomes weak because you can't really take it due to king b2, and then this knight is under attack and the rook is under attack. So rook goes to a1, the idea is obviously to play b4 or a4 as well, just to make sure knight never jumps with check. g5 was played, knight g2, bishop h5, rook e3. I'm not sure if rook e3 is best, because let's say after rook e1 at least you have knight e3, knight f5 plans. Rook e3, okay, bishop g4, and now b4, knight has to go, a5, c5, takes, and now knight f5, takes, and you have a beautiful knight on e5. You have knight on d7, which supports this knight on e5, h6, bishop e4, rook c8, rook e1, but it's hard to convert. The position is not that clear. Bishop d3, king d6, bishop e2, c5, b5, and now suddenly 2 postpones. It becomes a bit inconvenient for black. d4, king b3, rook b8, takes, and now rook goes to h1, trying to get to h7, maybe to h6, threaten this, support the pawns potentially. Rook goes to 8, knight e1, bishop f3, check, king b2, rook e8, and now it looks like Alireza is not going to lose this one. He creates enough counterplay potentially. Those 2 pawns are kind of dangerous as well. Bishop goes to d5, knight e5, rook a3, good move, king b1, king c1. So rook e2, king c1, g4, rook g1, not letting pawn move forward, and this rook also controls. This knight cannot go anywhere. Rook h8. The plan is to bring the rook to the 2nd rank. Knight g2 is a blunder because now apparently Alireza had knight f3. It's tough to see why it's good move, because after takes, I believe it's rook h2, and the position is slowly collapsing. The best move actually is to play rook g8. Yeah, rook g8 is just a lot more precise, because you pin the rook on g file and it's tough to come up with anything. So rook h2, a6, knight b6, a7, d3, rook a6, attacking the knight, knight goes to c4, queen a8, The pawn promotes, but there is no checkmate rook c2. There is no knight f3. There is knight d2, knight b3 doesn't work due to... If there was no bishop, knight d2, knight b3 would at least be a draw, but king has to move forward, king d4. I mean, look at this wild position. Now knight b3, knight d2 is basically a draw. Rook a4, king c3, and Alireza is just a few moves away from probably making a draw in this position. Just, it's amazing. He's down a rook, he is down a queen, and he still creates chances, but he plays c4, which is a mistake. And now he doesn't let the king go to c3 square, so knight b3 takes, king d6, king c4, king c8, king d4, king d6, king c4, almost offering a draw, but after queen f4, queen f3, rook a2, check, check, b2, pawn is about to promote, but skittish. And the idea being is that after this, rook g3, king f4, king c2, you'll pick up a pawn. If king f4, I mean, I can even sacrifice, pawn goes. And finally, someone beat Alireza. I said in yesterday's video that there will be a guy who will take either half a point or full point from Alireza. So, and just like that, Alireza lost the game, and his team actually ended up losing as well. Triveni Continental Kings lost the match. Then we move on to another game played in the same match. Giri Anish was playing against Wei Yi, and that was an interesting one. e4, knight f6, knight f3, g5, c3. Again, playing nonsense. Anish not good. Bishop e3, b4, trying to hold on to that pawn. Knight goes to g4, bishop d4, e5, h3. Trying to take the knight, he takes d4, he takes g4, takes. So the idea for Anish is that he opened h-file, and potentially he will try to create threats against h7 pawn. Queen a4 check, now rook goes to d1, trying to attack the pawn, knight d5, rook h5, that's mind-blowing move, bishop h3, g6, queen f4. What is Anish doing? I mean, what is going on? That's, I mean, brilliant. I believe he has that prep. Look, 18:17 on the clock. He had this prepped. I don't know. Queen f4, trying to get to h6 square as well. Queen a5 check. King f1 takes. Knight g5, threatening to take on a6, and after knight d8, the position is simply lost. So queen f5, trying to take the rook. Bishop d5, queen h8, king f7, rook d5. Now, I mean, it's the position is kind of equal in terms of material, but of course, look at this king and look at this king. I mean, who's better? I think if you don't know, you probably have never played chess. Queen c7, she takes h5, knight e6, takes, sacrificing the queen, but knight c7 isn't coming. And after king c6, queen f5, f takes e6, king g7 check, king g8 check, bishop e6, this rook is under attack, queen f7, checkmate is coming, rook c7, rook d8, brilliant sacrifice, and Wei Yi admitted he's lost, basically because here white transposed a winning opponent game, queen f8, queen a8, queen d6, rook d7, bishop d7, king d7. You might take a pawn, you might just take this way and play e4. These pawns will be stopped, but f4, g4 is coming. There is no way to stop those four passers. And Anish, what a great win. But guess what? Gukesh's team and Alireza's team played the fourth match of the day, and Alireza is looking to bounce back, and let's see what happens. And Gukesh, who also played the second match a day, he first lost to Hikaru, and now he's looking to bounce back as well. So let's see. d4, knight f6, knight c3, d5. Will we see Jabava London? Yes, sir. c5, e3, bishop g4, bishop goes back to d7, knight c6. Very, very sharp line. Queen a5, knight c3, bishop e6, a3, and now knight d5. So the idea of knight d5 is that after b4, I think you can go knight c3. After b takes a5, you can go knight d1, and then you take on c5, and potentially, you know, it's not a terrible position at all. You might play f6 at some point, then there are no problems. Queen goes to d2, knight takes, queen takes, and bishop c5. And we're getting endgame where Gukesh is just a lot better because the pawn structure for white is just terrible. So e4, f6, bishop h4, castle, knight a5, takes, bishop c4, rook d6, rook c6, and Gukesh is trying to put pressure on c3 pawn. Takes, bishop d3, and now rook c3, and he doesn't even care about f6 pawn, because now he puts rook on the third rank, king goes to f4, she takes f6, knight f2, rook d2 attacking the knight g4, knight b3 attacking the rook has to move, rook g2, knight f6, knight c5, and you know, it just doesn't look safe for this king. As soon as this pawn is lost, it might be just that lost for white. This pawn is under attack potential, this pawn is in a lot of trouble, so it's tough to play for white pieces. Rook f2, in f5, b6, rook g7. Now Alireza is of course trying to create counterplay, because if he doesn't, he's gonna be lost. And he's sacrificing exchange. Rook a7, rook h2, knight d5, rook h5, king f4, king b8, rook g7. Pawn is under attack. You still gotta be careful with this pawn though, because if it promotes, nothing will help Alireza. Rook h4, king f5, rook takes a3, knight b6, rook a5, check, knight d5, h5, rook h7. So the plan for Alireza is potentially create some, maybe even mating net around black's king, but again, Gukesh won't allow by playing rook a6, so it's still complicated for white. King d4, king f5. So around this moment, so the best move for white is actually to put king to d6 and rook a6, king f5, and then if h4 is ever played, you can play rook h8, king b7, rook goes this way, and now if king c6 there is knight b4, and guess what, if king tries to run, I mean, okay, let it run. Now if king d8, you just give check, and if king e8, knight c7, so it is a draw. So there were chances to make it equal. King goes to d4, king f5, check, check. So, and once this rook have gone from this square, I mean, king just runs forward. Once again, you gotta be careful because this is a threat. So rook goes to c4, and once again, king d6, and it is a draw. Pawn pushes, knight forks, all that stuff. King b5, knight goes back to e3. And I mean, Gukesh manages to push his pawn all the way to h3, h2. And now, let's say if knight goes back, ever goes back, and let's say there's this check, I mean, and pawn promotes, Gukesh wins. King b8, king c6, rook d5. And as I said, as soon as this king becomes exposed to check from this rook, the game is over and Gukesh wins the game. And he actually didn't help his team win the match as the... So it's interesting. So 4 points for Gukesh, 3 points for Wei Yi, 3 points for Vidit, then another 4 points for Katerina Lagno, who won with black pieces, and it's 4-4. Wait, 4-4. Yeah, exactly. So because of 3 wins with white pieces, Continental Kings ended up winning the match. I mean, what an effort by those guys, and 1 point difference. I mean, it is unbelievable what might happen in this event. And let's take a look at the table after 6 days. So Continental Kings first, Upgrade Mamba Masters 12, and you know, they look like 2 teams that will be facing each other in the final. Then we have Pipers, but again, everything might change. We have Kansas Grandmasters, then we have American Gambits at 6 and Alaskan Knights at 6. So it's getting complicated. It's getting very exciting towards the end of this event. We have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday left. We have 4 days left in this event, and it's only getting started. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you in the recap of round number 7 tomorrow. Bye-bye.